Today's episode is actually going to be about contracts. Basically, as an employer, how do you tell or share with your employees how to use a contract or how to effectively communicate the contract with your potential clients that are walking through the door? So whether you are a brick and mortar, whether you are providing services like subscription services online or in person, whether it's a service such as some type of health fitness services, or whether it is some like play area that kids are going to go jump at and you're signing waivers, your employees should be able to communicate those contracts that people are signing. We as consumers have a very bad habit of just signing away our lives. I mean, literally, that's what we're doing half the time, especially those waivers that we're signing. We're just like, if anything happens, we know you're not responsible. And we sign away everything because we are really eager to get to the final destination of whatever we're doing. So whether that is some type of amusement park or some type of, jumping house or those trampoline parks, or whether it is a, athletic service that we're getting or health services that we're getting, or even like our facial spas, whatever, we're so quick to sign away everything that a lot of times we don't read. But then you will have a handful of people that walk in, and those handful of people will want to read. Those handful of people will want to know, hey, what's going to happen if I cancel my subscription? Or, hey, what's going to happen if somebody on your end is responsible for something that happened to me, whether it's an injury or some other sort of damage? What's going to happen then? And at those points, you want to be able to effectively communicate the contract that that person is signing. So those contracts could be a waiver. Those contracts could be an actual contract for a subscription or a membership that they're signing up for, or just a purchase agreement that they're signing up for. But the idea is that you want to make sure that your employee, the person that is the face of your company at the time they're signing on a new client, can effectively communicate that contract. Now, ask me, why am I thinking about this? Why am I talking about this? Well, one, because everybody should be effectively able to communicate a contract, especially if they're the ones handing it over. And so if you have a particular group of people in your company that do that, they need to know what the contract says, and they need to know why it says it, what it means. But more than that, the reason this conversation is coming up with me today is because I was at this place where it's a Pilates place, and they do subscription-based services. And so I was just there trying to see it and try it out and experience it. And there was another lady that was there with me as well. Now we're at this point now, we're done with our trial. We're done with everything. They've explained to us the different types of memberships that are there. And they've explained to us the commitment and some of the other nuances, cancellations and things like that and all that good stuff. Now, this lady that was in front of me, she was ahead of me and she was asking these questions. And so one of her questions was, well, I don't want to be tied up to a subscription, auto renewal payments. I don't want that. I just don't feel comfortable about it. And I don't want it. And so what can we do? Because it was a 3-month commitment. And then it's, anytime after that, you can terminate without any type of penalties. And so a couple of things happened. I was standing there kind of observing, digesting everything and understanding everything. And also this was great market research for me as a lawyer, especially for services of the business that I was standing in. So it was really interesting because the lady that was the potential new client, there was a few things that she was having an issue with. One, she didn't want to do auto pay. Two, she didn't want to share her credit card and have it stored in the database of this company, which is, reasonable and also is personal information. So the privacy issues come into play. And three, she didn't want to sign a contract that said that she would have auto pay, especially when she had already discussed it with them that I'm going to pay you upfront the 3 months, and I don't want you to be putting me on auto pay. And then the person who was helping us, the representative that was there for the company, she called her manager, and her manager said, yes, that's okay. She can pay up front. But that conversation was not reflected in the contract that this lady was about to sign. And so it made me like, I was just watching everything. I was really intrigued. And also, I was very surprised because there are so many consumers out there that are actually very aware of the ramifications of not having things written in a contract, especially when the conversations leading up to that contract are not reflected in writing. And it really made me happy. And I was like internally saying, bravo, bravo to this lady, because I was like, you know what? You are an intelligent consumer. You are somebody also who is not going to rush into whatever you want to do. Now, someone might look at her, especially from the business, and think that, gosh, she's being so troublesome, or why is she causing issues? Why is this becoming a conflict? And it's not actually. What she's asking for was very reasonable. And what she's asking for is something that all of us as consumers should be asking for too, is that why? And then why is it that the contract is not reflective of the conversation that I just had? And what made it kind of like a little weird was when she was talking about her subscription and not being auto renewed. The person, the representative initially, before she called the manager, said, oh, yeah, it's not going to be auto renewed after 3 months. You know, we always ask you before we auto renew it. Now, if you've heard any of my Law Chat 101s, or if you've heard anything about my new subscription laws and rules that are coming out, that notice is required by law. Okay. It's not something that businesses are just doing out of sheer love for you, but it is required by law. But it's also a good business practice to give notice to your clients or your customers that, hey, this is about to auto renew. If you want to cancel, then here you can cancel right here. This is the easy way to cancel, but then also to be upfront about any type of fees or other type of penalties that you might be having. But what happened is that when the representative from the company was like, oh yeah, you know, we always ask for your permission, I actually interjected at that time. I said, well, but you're still auto renewing it. Like, she doesn't have to manually put in her credit card because you're auto renewing it, even though you give us notice that you're about to do it. And then she's like, yeah. So that at that point was a turning point for this other woman who was the, you know, potential new client, because she didn't want that. And apparently the representative from the company just wasn't hearing that. And also they're so trained to say a certain type of marketing spiel of theirs and to, you know, walk a certain protocol that it's hard for them to basically show flexibility. And so this is where I come to, and this is the whole point of my entire experience that I had. I had a lot of takeaways yesterday, but one of the main takeaways was we need to train our employees to communicate effectively the contract that your company is trying to have another person sign. If you are not there, the head of the company, the authorized signatory of your company, who can effectively communicate that contract with the other person sitting across the table, who is a potential new client or is an existing client, and you're just kind of, you know, continuing a relationship with them, then the person who is sitting there needs to be able to do that. And how do you do that? So in our today's world, we have a lot of companies that have young representatives standing in the front line of their business. And they're the ones that are handing the contracts out for the potential new clients to sign. And those are basically one-sided contracts in the sense of where only one person has to sign it. And it is kind of like that kind of an agreement. It's an understood agreement that the company is going to be providing those services, and the company is getting into this contractual agreement as well. Now, the problem, though, is that this woman yesterday from the company, this representative, she couldn't effectively communicate the contract. Not only that, she couldn't say why. She didn't say what the reasoning was or share the reasoning to explain maybe, and maybe have the potential new client understand it a little bit better. And also, there is no room to negotiate or to amend or edit. And that is a problem. And I know that to streamline companies, especially if you're an online business owner. And I mean, I do in my own business also, I have very standardized contracts. Like, this is my standard contract. This is how we're going to be moving forward. However, in the practical sense of business, you are going to have many clients, not just one. You're going to have clients that walk in that want to negotiate. They want to negotiate the prices. They want to negotiate the services that they're getting. They want to negotiate the terms. And you need to have space for that. some might think, well, they're not my ideal client, then if they're not going to agree to everything that I'm saying. Okay. But if you have like 10 people walking in with the same problem, you need to like reassess what you're doing. And it may not just be an ideal client issue now. It just might be we need to reevaluate our processes and procedures and what we're giving and listen to the market rather than dismissing the market at that time. And so here's some ways to have those people at the front line be able to communicate those conversations and help this potential new client that you have navigate through that contract that they are hesitant to sign, because ultimately it is a contractually binding agreement and they are binding themselves to a certain type of payment, to a certain type of commitment also. And the last thing people want is basically having their contracts be terminated because of COVID, but then get zero refund. And apparently that happened to this lady too. So she was really burnt in the past. And so she was trying to essentially avoid all of these issues in the future. And I do not blame her for 1 second. In fact, later when she had left, the representative of this company was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I'm like, "There's nothing to be sorry about. This woman had the full right to know what she's signing. And she should have been told what she's signing. She should understand what she's signing. And it shouldn't just be a blind, I'm just going to sign my life away type of a situation." So here are some practical ways to actually have your employees, learn and effectively communicate this contract. Number one is essentially training. We need to train them. It doesn't matter if they are on the bottom of your totem pole. They need to be trained properly. They need to be trained with customer service. They need to be trained that if a client is asking a question, it's not wrong, it's not disruptive, it's not inconvenient, because at the end of the day, you are a service provider and you want to make your clients, you want to make your customers comfortable with your services, with the process of your services and the way you're handling them. The experience starts not afterwards, but the experience starts at the beginning when you first say hello and they open the door and walk through that door. That's when the experience is starting. So whether that experience is starting on the website or they're walking through that door, the experience has already started. So your employees should have good training on customer service, good training on the company values and the scope of the company, the core of the company, why the company is doing certain things, and what you put before other values or other situations, what comes as a priority. And then in addition to that, you want to have, shadowing, where they're shadowing somebody who's already in that role, if you can provide that, or simulations, where you're doing mock, hey, what if this was to happen? Or, hey, if this client was to come and say this, how would you handle it? And then have those kind of mock situations where they can practice, and they practice with you or somebody else who has the ability to train them in a way that is up to par with the company that you started, with the company that you are holding near and dear to your heart. The last thing you want is to have a team that can't uphold the company values, but they won't be able to uphold it if you don't effectively share with them and train them the company values and how to integrate them into the entire experience itself. So that's super important, is training. Now, number two is, if you are hiring somebody who's going to be handling contracts or handling issues that could really lead to legal issues, then you need to train them on that as well. The first training would be actually showing them the contracts that they would be handling, walking them through those contracts and telling them why you're using this contract, the purpose of the contract, and maybe even some background information on how and why these contracts are in place, but then also go through the clauses of the contract and what each clause means. Because a lot of times what happens is when you go to these places, they kind of highlight the big clauses, the termination clause, the fee clause, a number of times or hours that they get to go to certain things, or the services that they're getting. But all the nitty gritty in betweens are never discussed. And those are kind of just glazed over. And it's really important that you're able to not glaze over them, because you will have people who ask about it. You will have people who are wondering about it and who are going to say, I don't agree to that, but they still want your services. They still want everything, but they just may not agree to one thing. So at that point, what is the protocol? What is the plan of action when someone is not agreeing, but wants the services, but they just have a certain thing that they're not agreeing with? So now with the story that I was sharing earlier, the lady basically was like, hey, listen, you just talked to your manager. Your manager said I can pay upfront for 3 months. And now you're telling me that you're going to take the credit card that I'm paying upfront with, store it in your database, and then still be able to use it for auto renewals. And then, the poor girl who was working at this company was trying her best, but she really couldn't explain why. She couldn't explain that, yes, you're right. Actually, and she agreed with her that, yeah, you're right. But we still have to keep it. Well, why? So if there was a way for the manager or for somebody else to be on speed dial to have a conversation with the lady and then to basically edit that part of the contract that she was signing to reflect the conversation that they just had about the prepayment of 3 months, then it would have been fine. And it would have been a quick fix. And it would have been something where the lady was happy. She got good customer service. They and the company was on the same page. Nobody was paying less or extra. It wasn't negotiating the amount. It was just negotiating I don't want to give you my credit card. And so that could have been a quick fix where they could have deleted that section of auto renewal. They could have deleted anything of that nature and then still had a contract that was aligned with the company's practices. But at the same time, you were having a client who's happy. And again, the agreement of the terms that they had prior to the signing of the contract, but they couldn't do that. So if you have an employee who cannot make those decisions, then either the people who can make the decisions need to be on speed dial or need to be in a close enough parameter that they can come and fix the situation, or have it where you can say, you know what, I understand. We're going to have my manager call you and we'll figure this out so you are happy and you can take these services that we have. But none of that happened yesterday, except for the fact that the lady that, the representative called somebody, but that was it initially. And then after that, they just couldn't do anything. And so it was a pretty unfortunate end result, which could have been handled differently. And so it just really made me think that why do we have employees that are in the front, the face of the company when people are trying to sign up for something or trying to get those services, especially with the contracts, but yet they cannot effectively communicate the contract. And so, if I had asked extra questions when I was signing up, she wouldn't have been able to answer them at all. And so those are some things that as employers or, owners of a company, we need to be thinking about, because sometimes what we do is we just hire and we're like, okay, wonderful. You're going to be the receptionist. You're going to be the person greeting somebody when they walk in and signing them up and, be the sales. But if the sales doesn't know how to sell and they cannot communicate the terms of anything, you have a weak sales team and you need to reevaluate it. So all these big companies out there, all of these fitness places and all of these other online businesses, while your companies might be big, but if your frontline of employees are weak, that's your weakest link and we need to fix that. And so I encourage you to reevaluate the sales teams that you have or the employees that are, the faces of your company, and how are they handling these type of circumstances and these situations? How are they handling the client experience? Because ultimately contract signing is part of the client experience. And while I can zone into just the contract and talk about the legal aspects, but if you look at the bigger picture, it's not just the legal aspect that is drowning this lady that was coming there. She was also upset about the whole client experience that she was now getting. And those were some major takeaways that I had from this, literally 15-minute encounter that I was observing and watching. So if you have other questions about this, please DM me. I'd love to hear your thoughts also about this topic. I know that it can be difficult at times. And I know sometimes we're just not thinking about all of these things because we're just really zoned into getting our business started or getting that XYZ thing done. So we really need to zone out and see the bigger picture when we are thinking about our customer experience and the customer journey in our businesses as well. I hope this was helpful to you. And if it was, please subscribe and share the love with others. And thank you so much.